Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Quick audio check. We'll give it a couple of seconds here and we will get rolling. Welcome, everybody. For those of you just dialing in, please give a quick post in the chat of where in the country you're dialing in from. Would be fantastic. I see we've got some great partners joining. Great to see some friendly names, some that we just saw in person.
Yeah, hi Lisa.
Absolutely.
I guess I'll put in there where I'm
Yeah.
from. So can we put it in there? They'll put in the chat.
Yeah, so as you're posting in the chat, guys, also Q&A is open this evening. We're going to keep things very conversational, very interactive. This is live. A lot of these things these days are coming in as recordings or otherwise. So first of all, welcome, guys. Let's jump in. We've really taken some time. We appreciate everyone's time these days, and quite frankly, starting off with a big piece of appreciation is, if you really haven't looked at how much you have gone through as a dentist or dental practice owner over the past 5 or 6 years, certainly you deserve a round of applause and or pat on the back. And the fact that you're still now certainly coming out to the far end, and while there's still lots of challenges, what we try to do for those of you that have just joined one of our first CE courses, welcome. For those of you that have joined us before, we've assembled some great subject matter experts to help deal with some of these top challenges. So the purpose of tonight's CE course is to dig right into those two biggest challenges, the two biggest expenses, and how to help ensure that you've got some great best practices and creative solutions on the business of dentistry. We all know running a dental practice isn't just about providing great care, it's about making the right business decisions. Let it be the staff, let it be the physical location, let it be dealing with landlords, dealing with outgoing staff, incoming staff, let alone the operations of the team to help make sure it's the best experience possible. So, again, couldn't be more excited. We have Swiss Monkey and Christine Cison, who's joining us this evening. Christine's got a huge wealth of knowledge. Remote staffing is all over the place. What about AI? What about remote? Geez, can I really give up that front desk? How does that work? How do I keep productive and profitable? What happens if there's an issue? How do I figure those front office gaps? How do I streamline some of those workflows? How does that work? Oh, it'll never work in my location, right? It'll never work in my town. My patients will never accept it. So Christine is a huge resource, and quite frankly, one of the subject matter experts for that. She's the CEO of Swiss Monkey. It's a front office solutions company. She brings a decade of dental practice management experience. Christine and I have traveled the country multiple times over and get stuck waiting outside of United lounges from time to time as we crisscross the country to help share the good word that there are solutions and there's resources to help you through it. Experience is second to none. So, decade working within the dental practice management, holds a BA in neurobiology from UC Berkeley and a master's in health policy and management from Harvard. So, just a few small accolades there. Big background in brain tumor research, healthcare IT integration, and developing a community-wide healthcare and telemedicine systems. And what else do you do in your part-time, Christine? Thank you so
I
much.
try to sleep a little bit here. So
Well, that's fantastic. Truly appreciative, and thanks again for joining. Trent Hughes, speaking from the recruiting side, the talent acquisition, the talent retention. Top issues we see today are, Eric, Trent, we're finding issues, finding the right people, keeping the right people. Am I posting ads? Where do I post the ads? I'm not getting the responses. Everybody wants too much money. Everyone's here today and gone the next. There's no allegiance, there's no alliance. Talent and people has become such a biggest asset, as well as in some cases a pain point today across the board. So Trent comes to us with over 15 years of dental experience, 5 years with Arthur Marshall, has spoken to thousands of doctors specifically about their staffing and specific needs as it regards to people and growth. Also comes prior to that comes with a financial planning financial planning, again, working with entrepreneurs, coming up with creative strategic solutions. Also serves on a healthcare center board in Dallas. And Trent, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, this is an awesome opportunity. Thanks, Eric. It's always good to see you and Christine. It's awesome. Looking forward to it.
Perfect. So again, guys, thanks for posting through. The Q&A is open, as well as if you want to throw anything through to the chat, we'll cover some great Q&A as we go. Keep it interactive, keep it conversational, keep it fun. We're going to keep things pretty fast paced. We're going to keep things within the hour. We're going to keep things very much looking at it through the eyes of the two folds. One is the dental owners, meaning for those of you that own the dental clinic, talking about how do we hire, where do we source, how do we retain that top talent. Of course, the front desk, the infamous front desk. How do we help to really finally master that component of it, especially if heaven forbid, right, we have a staffing change or they call in, they go on leave or otherwise. How do we get a solution in place? Maybe not today, but how do we make sure we've got something ready to go when that comes through? And then lastly, the second biggest expense beyond people, right, is your space. And let it be if you own your real estate or lease your real estate, both of which are critical and can become a significant challenge. And right now, we've seen over 54% of dentists overpaying in rent. From that perspective, right, just to help customize things this evening, here's a quick introductory poll as we jump through. So give us a little bit of information. We're happy to customize the specific piece. Then we'll look at it from the staffing perspective. So if I'm a hygienist or associate, right, or if you are hiring a hygienist or associate, let's try to look at it from that perspective, right? How are they looking at top opportunities? How do they look at top interview questions, right? And for those of you that are an associate that are looking to grow, how do you help to source out the right fit? Because it's tough being a dentist. Every single day, all your school, all your training, etc., is how to be incredible clinicians. And if I ask the question, how much time did you have trained on the business side of dentistry? Typically, I see the big zero. So we've had the privilege of working with Tufts University and being the part of the fourth year dental program and many other institutions. Myself, I sit on the faculty of the Schulich School of Business and we do the mini MBA program, as well as the owner of Sears Consulting Group. We've had the privilege for 32 years of supporting doctors dealing with their landlords and helping advise them through the negotiation and renegotiation of their office leases. For the CE, for PACE credits tonight, again, we'll need to be interactive and connected, and they'll be processed with roughly 10 business days afterwards. All right. On that note, I will pass it over to you, Christine.
This is where I can kick you off.
Kick me off.
Okay, here we go.
I'll
Let's see.
stop sharing as we go. And just from a quick perspective on the polls, roughly 43%, Christine, are looking at acquiring or building out a new practice, right? About 14% are planning to transition and sell within the next 5 years. Another 14% sort of mid-career across the board. And in addition to that, roughly 43% are looking to start or buy a new clinic. So perfect.
Great.
Over to you, Christine.
Well, first, thank you everyone for joining. And it's late in the evenings. I appreciate you guys all taking a little time out. It's 5 o'clock here in California, so right in time for happy hour. And we're going to talk about staffing. So if you need a little bit of wine or whatever your favorite adult beverage is, you know what? No one is here to judge. So again, my name is Christine. I run a company called Swiss Monkey, like Swiss chocolate, but Swiss Monkey. And we're really a front office operational resource. So we help practices all across the country, from startups all the way to large enterprise clients, really take care of everything front office. And we do that through a 3,000 plus US based dental professional remote network. We're also building out custom AI agents. And really together, the hope is between your on-site team, really kind of a fluid on-demand remote front office team, and AI agents, that we can give you a little joy back into dentistry and really focus on patient care versus the operational pieces. So I have about a quick 15 minutes here to talk to you just a little bit about how to do this, what this is, why now, and I'll give my information at the end in case we don't get through everything. So I want to start off with just a little anecdote. This happened a few years ago. Monday morning, where all the great things happen, Monday morning, right before the patient comes in, I got a coach that said, "Happy Monday, Christine. I have an office in Cameron Park. I think you helped them in the past. They're in crisis mode. The entire staff quit last week and they are left with only one hygienist. They need immediate help with the front and back. Can you help?" So this is one of our coaches. This is every dentist's dream, right? And so actually this Monday morning, I got on the phone, spoke with the husband, the wife. They were in tears. They just came back from their anniversary. Came back from a birthday party. They were leaving on Wednesday for an anniversary. And they came in Monday morning with 5 letters of resignation on their desk. There was no team there. I mean, there was, like, as she said, just kind of like the very lean clinical on-site team. This is an emergency case situation, kind of break the glass scenario. And in this case, we were able to actually connect them with remote professionals that were able to log in, triage the phones, audit the schedule, move patients, continue billing, all within 48 hours. I'd like to share that because, I want you to see the power of how quickly we can actually solve some of these situations if you're open to the idea of remote professionals. Most of my doctors, hopefully this doesn't happen to anyone, but I want you to know, because I know how difficult and kind of the stress that it takes when you're running a front office. And this can happen at any time, right? Some where, people are pretty fluid in the front office. They want a raise that's probably more than you're wanting to give, or they kind of resign without any 2-week notice. So I want to talk a little bit about how we help practices like this. And I know there are a lot of startups here with people that are thinking about acquiring new practices, how you can really use this model to minimize the disruption when things like this happen. And so why now? This isn't new. I mean, I think that's really key here. Remote work has been done a long time in dentistry in terms of outsourcing and using people out in the Philippines and whatnot in terms of doing more work. The reason that it's happening now is there are still, and Chen will know in terms of when he talks about staffing, is there's still 2 to 3 times more jobs than people available to work. We just don't have enough people. And so when you think about when you're running the business, how are you going to really maximize the people on site? And you got to think about, hey, where's everyone else? And how do I really tap into that talent market? If you're looking for front office staff, you're certainly not alone. The ADA said, hey, 1 out of 3 doctors are looking for admin staff. And boy, is it fluid. So even when you get somebody, I think it was traditionally 3 years people would stay, and now it's closer to 2 years and some even less, some 6 months. And that front office is very fluid. And so the idea is, what is the new operating model so that when these changes do occur, whether it's, a part-time thing of, hey, someone's going on maternity leave or sick leave versus, hey, there's a true transition. What can you do? How do you protect yourself? What kind of insurance plan and structural change can you have in your front office to really bet against stuff like this? Staffing shortages absolutely impact the bottom line. There was a study showed that there's an 11% in your practice capacity to produce just by not having enough people. And so for those that have, I think the average practice is about $1 million. That's about $100,000 loss just by not having enough people. And then lastly, I like to talk about this because I do think this is important. The fabric of the talent that's now available in the US has changed, right? The baby boomer generation is no longer the largest working demographic in the US. It's really this millennial and Gen Z that's 1981 and younger, which is for everyone on the call, I'm going to assume. But the idea here is that they just have a different relationship with work. They want to get paid faster. They don't want to wait for, kind of a 1-year review. They want to get paid now. They're digitally native, meaning they can enter and exit out of conversations with the touch of a button. That impacts their ability to talk to patients about treatment plans, et cetera. That emotional intelligence might not be as sophisticated as you want, which obviously impacts how you run a business. And obviously, there's this growing trend of what we call work from home, work from anywhere. And so these are people who don't want to come to the office, or they want to come in just 1 day a week or a couple of days a week. It's really important for those who are running a business now, because that means that the labor market that you're trying to tap into isn't what it was 10, 20 years ago, especially those coming out of dental school. What they were, the talent that was available then is very different. And their relationship with work and what they're expecting from work and their employees has changed. And so if you can figure out a blueprint to running your operations that takes all of this into account, I think you're going to be in a competitive edge. And we see a lot of this already taking place with my larger clients, these kind of enterprise clients that have 5, 10, 20 plus locations. They're starting to already kind of utilize remote work and understanding how to use fractional labor versus full-time employees. And so what is the traditional dental practice? So most of you might just, hey, it's on site, everything done is done on site, checking in the patient, obviously all the clinical aspects, billing, posting, answering the phones, etc. Some of you are probably, you're already doing some version of a hybrid model where your accountant, your rep, your marketing, they're not on site, they're off site. So you might not be thinking that you're running a practice kind of the hybrid way, but you are. And so the concept I want to bring forth is that how do you extend this into operational theme, saying, hey, if it's not patient facing, does it have to be done on site? And the answer is no. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm saying everything should be done off site that's not patient facing, but I want to give you the paradigm of understanding that if it's not patient facing, you can pull it off site. And really where that balance is for you and your team and where you are in your clinical journey changes. I mean, I have practices that just dentists who are coming out of dental school who don't want to hear the phone ring at all. And they're very aggressive and they're saying, hey, I don't want any of the front office being done on site. I want everything done off site. I don't want to hear the phone ring. And so really only the clinical aspects are done on site. And they have really kind of a nice concierge person greeting the patients. Do you want tea, etc. So you can be very aggressive like that. The majority of my practices are somewhere around here. And it's really kind of a reflexive model as to like, hey, my on-site team is really good here. We don't have the talent here. How can I pull in off-site talent to complement my on-site team? So that's the general paradigm of how I want you to think about remote workforce. And, anything kind of the mechanics, I can walk through that with you probably post meeting here. Now you'll see AI agents here is kind of, I put that in orange because we're certainly getting a little bit more and more infusion of this technology. It's pretty new, but if you're on Facebook and any of these conferences, you're going to certainly start to pop, it's going to start to pop up more and more because the technology and its ability to complement an on-site team and kind of live humans is incredible. And it's pretty good now, but I would say in 6 months and in 6 months and above, I would certainly kind of just make sure you're paying attention to it because it has the probability to be able to really reduce your expenses but increase your top line. So how do you really think about a remote workforce? How do you integrate it? So I tell my doctors, sometimes they're like, hey, Christine, I actually don't want anyone on my front office. I want to replace the whole team, right? And so I wanted to kind of pump the brakes. Before you do that, I always say, before you put in any AI, any remote staffing, think about what is your vision? Where are there gaps? What is your on-site team? What's their capability is? And my sense is if your team is like, hey, I can, if you're $100,000 and you want to produce $200,000 in a month and your on-site team can say, hey, we can do that without adding any more resources, that's fantastic, right? So it just might be like you just need some strategic kind of brainstorming. But typically what happens is that they're saying, hey, I don't have time to answer the phones because, I'm doing billing or whatever it might be. Or, hey, I don't have time to do the insurance collections because the XYZ is happening. So you really want to think about where there are gaps in your workflow. What is the capability of your on-site team? And then you want to start to look out and find the talent that's available because there's great talent everywhere and they can do a variety of different things within the Swiss Monkey Network at least. And so the clearer you are in terms of like where the strengths of your practices are and you can identify where the gaps are, then you can start to plug in the remote professionals as you need it, as well as the AI. So your vision, then you can connect your talent. And because it is a remote model, one of the things I want to tell my doctors is that there is technology that needs to be in place that needs to be HIPAA compliant, so that you're not moving patient information in a risky way, right? We see a lot of the security breaches. It's not meant to scare you, but for us, for example, we keep all the patient data inside the office. We have the remote professional remote into the office and we really don't want to move anything off of there. So if you're going to not use our platform and you're going to try this on your own, which is fine, I just want to make sure that you want to have the safeguards there and just to understand it's HIPAA and all of those things are not meant to scare you, but you want to make sure you're complying and you're not using your traditional AOL email or your Gmail address or your, those types of things, personal emails, and sending patient information across those kind of unsecured platforms. So you want to make sure that infrastructure is in place to be able to do this. And then once you get a remote professional, it's just similar to an on-site team member where you still have to orient them to your practice. Every office is a little different, and you got to have the quality assurance, the QA, QI pieces there as well. So you don't want to just grab, hey, Eric, you're over here, come on and down and and then leave that remote professional to do what they need to do. Every professional is different. Every practice is different. And so you want to make sure that you are really you're orienting them properly and anchoring them in terms of how you'd like things done. So that's the general process. And I apologize, I'm going fast, but I want to make sure that, you kind of get a sense of how we do it here at Swiss Monkey in terms of the blueprint, in case you want to do it elsewhere. But that's really the way that we do that. And then once you get that professional, again, it's really, you want to make sure that you're keeping in touch with that professional to ensure that they're that they're doing things the way you want to. What are the kinds of use cases that you can use a remote professional? My doctors use it for things like contract work. I mean, a lot of these popular things are like, hey, someone's going on vacation. We have a bunch of AR. We don't need a full-time person. We just need someone for, 3 months to bring something down. So you really think of remote professionals. That's one of the really popular use cases because no one's going to leave their full-time job to do a part-time job, right? So remote work, fractional units of labor, that's a great use of thinking about remote professionals. Things that don't require a full-time team member. Maybe you just need phones on Monday or Tuesday, right? Maybe just someone on Saturdays. Or maybe it could be a scheduling coordinator if you're one of those smaller practices. So we can certainly walk through the different types of scenarios, but that's those are popular ways that our doctors use remote professionals. Doctors ask, is this going to reduce my expenses? And I tell them it's not just about reducing expenses, it's about increasing your top line. That's really important because if all you're going to do is ask Eric or Trent to come on and do some remote work, and you're not actually increasing how much you're making, all you've done is decrease your margin. So we really want to work with our doctors and really want to urge you as you're doing this is that make sure you're just not adding an expense. You want to make sure that you're really playing Tetris with your team in terms of their time, so that you're also increasing, how much you're actually producing in your office. I know I'm gonna move through a couple of things. I want to just show this as an example of a productivity report. So at the end of every session for our team members, if they're using a professional through us, is we do have them submit a productivity report. This is a sample one. It's really to cover really accountability on the professional side because I like my doctors to know like, hey, here's how much we're paying, Trent, we paid him $100. What did he do? And so whether or not it's this, our productivity platform or something else, when you're going into this model, you want to make sure your professionals have some accountability. We actually take screenshots and keyboard strokes and time clock. So you actually have a lot more color around what a professional is doing when you're using our platform. But if you're not, which is okay, just make sure that you kind of on onset, just make sure that there's some way that you understand what that person is doing so you understand the impact of their work when they're working remotely. Okay. I want to just really quickly, how am I doing on time, Eric? Do I have like one minute? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
I want to talk a little bit about AI agents and chatbots because we are building these for our offices. So you have kind of you have your on-site team, you can have a remote team member there, obviously as kind of contract or, certain safety nets for your on-site team. These AI agents are really interesting to me because they're different than chatbots. The chatbots, I love this analogy. They're like vending machines, right? You might see them on the like web agents or whatever. And so they're essentially like, hey, they have a certain number of inputs and they give you a certain number of outputs. And these AI agents are very different. They can act autonomously. You give them a goal, you can give them a persona, you give them guardrails, and you can give them a knowledge base where they can actually interact and learn. And so if you think about what the implications of that might look like for your office, it's huge. So this is more equivalent to like a chef, right? So they have kind of the ingredients, they can make these different dishes. It's not as kind of structured. And it's incredibly powerful when you think about where it is right now. If you're using ChatGPT, you can see, ChatGPT 5 just came out. You can see what the potential can look like for a practice. And what I think is really amazing, because we're building out really call agents for our offices right now are probably the most popular, is that these call agents, we're building them at roughly, let's just say less than $500 a month. They're full-time, they're 365, 24/7. They're a fraction of the cost of a full-time team member. And so they're not meant to replace your team, right? That's really key. I imagine your on-site team is going to manage AI agents so they can become more productive. But imagine what that looks like if I'm saying, hey, for a fifth of the cost, or maybe less as technology gets better, you can have a full-time team member. You can take that extra savings and extra production and actually redistribute that to your team. So the key here is as you're thinking about AI, because a lot of people are nervous about it, even off-site team, is that how do you create alignment between your on-site team, your off-site team, and agents? So really thinking through like what that discussion looks like is going to be, I think, really key as you are building your operating model for your practice. So your job is to make sure everything gets done, not do everything. I know I kind of sped through that, but I hopefully gives you enough of a framework for how to think about remote work, the potential that it can have for you, where you can use it, as well as AI agents. So here's my information here. That's a schedule link to my calendar. It's always the best way. You can email me, but I prefer text. That's just the way I do things these days. But Eric, I don't know if I went too little or too far, but again, we're only remote work. So I'm going to hand it over to Trent, because he's where he does all the hard job with the on-site people, the associates, and the elusive hygienists and all that. So thanks everyone again for taking a little time, and I'll hand it over to Trent.
Perfect.
Thanks, Christine.
And some great questions that have been coming through. So again, we're going to do some great Q&A at the end. Dr. B, appreciate all of them. We're going to get to each of those by the end. The first one actually, Trent, is very much aligned with you, which talks about some of the websites out there which use recruiters, and they're setting people up for stuff that's not really applicable, and it's frustrating. So yeah, I think this would be fantastic and a great lead in, Trent, to see, what are you seeing as top challenges today on the recruiting front, and the doctors you're chatting with that are struggling to get the right people at the right time. Over to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Eric. Thanks, Christine. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's the lack of talent. There's roughly 14,000 open jobs across the nation right now, and there's about 6,000 dentists coming out of programs every year. So, um, yeah, posting, going through a recruiter or all options, and doing it on your own. The problem with that is the time. So yes, posting, Indeed is a popular site where you can post your job and hope that someone applies. But if you've got 14,000 opportunities out there, how do you separate your opportunity from the next? And it's tough. And if you're not doing it every day, then it can pose a real challenge. A lot of what we see are local dentists pricing and making ads for local candidates. And what people fail to realize is you have somebody that could be in New York looking for an opportunity in California, or looking for an opportunity in Texas. These residents, these dentists that are actively looking for opportunities, they're open. They may have a focus to go maybe to a California, but if the right opportunity opens up, they'll go anywhere. So when you're looking at your offer, you have to look at a nationwide a number. You have to look at what is the nation's average when it comes to compensation models for dentists, and not just local. And I get that all the time. Well, Trent, my guy next door is only offering $700 a day plus 25% in a production. Well, what you fail to realize is if somebody is looking at another state and they're offering $1,000 a day and 30% of production, you're competing against that and you don't know it. And so just having an open mind to listen to that consultation about pricing. So that's probably one of the challenges, is just making sure you have a good offer. The other issue, 4 or 5 years ago, a dentist owner could call his colleague, "Hey, I have an associate role open. Do you know anybody?" You could post an ad and you'll get response. Today, there's so much competition out in the marketplace that that's not working anymore. You really need to have a dedicated staff that can not just post an ad and wait for somebody to respond, but you got to call through database. You got to make phone calls. You got to reach out and do a strategic partnership with someone to find that talent. And that's where we see a lot of success, is finding a guy that's, what they say, the best dentist on their worst day. So they're in an opportunity. When they first started with the practice, there was hopes of partnership. There's hopes of a buy-in, but it never comes. And so you catch that somebody, and that person is not on the job boards. That person is not actively looking. But if you had a dedicated staff, you had somebody that was dedicated to helping you fill that role, you catch them. You make a phone call, you send a text, you send an email. And again, you catch a great dentist on his worst day because they're fed up. They're fed up of just getting pushed to the side. And they take that phone call from your whoever's helping you recruit. Time. You know, we've got a lot of people on here that are looking at acquiring or building out, starting a new practice. It's time. You can't get everything done, get your office ready, and then you don't have an associate and you're looking and you need somebody in that next month. It takes time. It's about a 3 to 4 month time period to effectively recruit. And that's putting together a game plan, posting your ads, having somebody that's actively calling through databases, calling through the CVs, vetting these candidates, and really having great conversations. And that takes a lot of time. Most dentists don't have that time. Most dentists don't even have the staff to dedicate that time because you're seeing patients, you're treating patients, and you just don't have the dedicated time to focus on that. So that's another challenge. The other one, I just had a call with a dentist today. He reached out to me about 6 months ago, said he needed an associate. Went through our process. At the time, it was to hire Arthur Marshall. It was out of his budget, so he said, "I'm going to do it on my own." Fine. I told him, "Hey, get on Indeed, post your ad. There's some people that are interested in your location." So today I get a text. He said, "Hey, Trent, the candidate that we had hired or were interviewing didn't work out. They weren't who they said they were when they interviewed." And he's asking me about our process again. Um, and so the other thing is having the time to really vet and screen the candidate, making sure that they're the right fit. I don't think he did a working interview, or if he did, after that 3 months, when the mask comes off and the true person comes out, you don't have anybody that's going to guarantee that candidate. So um, not knowing how to interview is another thing that we run across when we're talking to practice owners. So that's where Arthur Marshall comes in. We specialize in permanent placement, long-term placements for associates and anything that supports a dental office. We have a dedicated recruiting team that vets, screens these candidates. So after we really understand what that dentist owner is looking for in the candidate, know about the practice, those recruiters spend time on the phone on the front end with candidates and interviewing and making sure they're the right fit. So having the staff and the knowledge of the industry and being able to talk to these candidates as extension of the practice, it helps that process quite a bit. I would say those are probably the main challenges. Is just the lack of talent. It's a very competitive market. So if you don't have the right setup, you don't have the right comp when it comes to an associate. One of the things that we see that works is doing maybe a daily guarantee or a percentage of collections or productions, whatever is higher. So it incentivizes an associate to be productive because they don't want to work off of just a daily guarantee, and you want to make that daily guarantee something that they're not going to be able to make a living off of. And so those are some of the things that we see that helps when it comes to making good offers for associates. For staff, hygienists, um, pre-COVID, once COVID happened, hygienists saw that, hey, there was a lot of feelings of not being truly appreciated, overworked and underpaid. And then once COVID happened, a lot of them didn't come back to the industry. They went different routes. Maybe their significant other, partner, or spouse worked and made enough money that keep them home. And so when we come back from that, now they're looking at not wanting to do full time and want to work a couple of days here and there, maximize the money they can get. And so strategies around making sure that the hygienist is comfortable in their role, feels appreciated, whether it's through compensation, bonus models, offering other benefits outside of just what's in the office, are some of the things that has helped with maintaining and securing good hygienist talent. Um, assistants, the same. They're not a direct they don't bring in production, but they can make your office run smoother. That allows you to produce more. So just coming up with creative compensation models to attract and keep them, making sure it's a friendly work environment. They feel like a team, giving them opportunities for expansion and advancing in their roles are things that can help with retaining and keeping the support staff. Trying to think what else are you seeing, Eric, on questions from the audience?
Yeah, we'll cover a bunch of additional ones. There's one point of clarification there, Trent. When you talk about lack of talent, was it a reference to, the training of coming out of dental schools and not training properly, or was it more of just a supply and demand type of
Sup-
thing?
Supply and demand, supply and demand. So obviously, when you're a dentist owner, a practice owner, you can look at, hey, I'm okay with a new grad, so coming out of training. A lot of those you'll have to mentor, get them up to speed, which is perfectly fine. We do talk to a lot of new grads, and that's one of the main things that what a new grad is telling us is they want to be in a situation where they do have some support, some mentorship, and you're not just bringing them in and throwing them out and letting them fend for themselves. We do see a ton of that. On the flip side of that, finding an experienced dentist 3 to 4 years out, a lot of the challenges we see there is setting their own ways. And so we see a lot of dentist owners saying, look, 10, 12 years, I don't want 3 to 5. They're still not really, they're setting the ways we can kind of mold and grow them to be the dentist that we're looking for. So not necessarily lack of talent. I'd say just the supply and demand. There's so many opportunities out there. There's just not a lot of dentists out there looking for the opportunity.
Got it. And looking at all the placements, and again, we're going to dig more into this, and in the essence of time, we'll give ourselves about 5 or 10 minutes on the back end. But maybe just one final question for you is, again, of the thousands of placements you guys have done over the years, what's one common theme? There's no silver bullet, of course, but help to shed that to the doctor that's just repeatedly gone back to the market multiple times, frustrated, not having the time, etc. What other sort of key best practices or creative solutions you've seen that has helped result in getting such great placements, time and time again?
Yeah. So flexibility. Um, a lot of new grads that we talk to come in wanting a lot of money up front. I want $1,000 a day plus 40% of my
Me
production.
too.
Yeah, right. Don't we all? And so it's just being flexible. One of the things is, well, it's a new grad. Why would I pay them that much? I pay somebody with experience that much. And in today's market, it really doesn't matter. You lead with the best offer that you can that makes sense financially for the practice. We know that at the end of the day, if we get a good dentist that has the experience that we're looking for, and you have the patience, you have the practice that will support a dentist that can come in there and do $4,000 and $5,000 a day in production, $3,000 a day in production that will support what they're asking for. Again, part of what makes it work is the expectations that the practice owner has of the associate coming in and making sure they're in alignment. If there's opportunity for partnership or ownership, talk about that. Although that's not usually a guarantee, when you offer that, that makes the offer a little bit more attractive depending on what you're looking for.
Awesome. Excellent. Perfect. There's a lot of great questions coming through there. We're going to dig through those and, cover a few key components at a high level. I think, really just to bring things full circle as well is staffing is absolutely key. The other piece that is also becoming a bigger and bigger issue is how much we are spending on our physical space. The lease now has become the largest check that most clinicians are paying to any personal or professionals or to any single entity in their personal professional lives, full stop. It is shocking to see now that we see over 54% of dentists in North America overpaying in rent. yet you are the best tenants on the planet. You have the highest build-out costs, right? Easily these days, 300, 350. Up in Christina, Northern California, and San Francisco, 450 per square foot. You're in the same location for 26 and a half years on average. You're COVID proof, right? You can't work from home, regardless of what your staff says. And right, very, very important that you're always bringing in high quality foot traffic. So why? Why do we think that so many of the doctors out there are overpaying in rent? Well, as we ask this question, a lot of the CE courses and a lot of the lectures we do throughout North America, it really boils down to a few key pieces. Similar to what Trent said, it's time. Landlords know that you are, in many cases, the sole breadwinner, or certainly the primary breadwinner in your clinics. And therefore, they know that you are chairside through, right, the 9 to 5. So they know this and they can stall, delay, wait, etc., knowing full well you just don't have the time. Typically, we see an average lease renewal negotiation, etc., easily 20, 30, 40 plus hours to help secure the proper wins through the financial and or business clauses. So why? The other piece is data, right? One of the key things that we've, now rely on is Cirrus has been around for over 32 years. We still remain the preeminent and really only healthcare specialized tenant advisory and lease negotiation firm of our kind in North America. This is it. This is all we do. We have over 20,000 dental office leases on file. We've mapped them out. We use that data to help make sure that when we look at dental office leases in Dallas, where we all were a couple weeks ago, to how to make sure we're not overpaying in rent. Because historically, what does happen is doctors see a great space, they call the number on the sign. Before they know it, they're signing a binding letter of intent on the trunk of a broker's car. And they've just now locked themselves into the next 20, 30 plus years of an ever increasing rent. So data becomes important, lack of training in schools on some of the business side of dentistry. So we've had the privilege of supporting over 13,000 doctors through these lease negotiations. So back to the theme of the best practices. Well, part of it is some of the data. So this was a recent valuation that got sent to us from a practice broker looking at billings, EBITDA, and earnings multiple. Now, this was, obviously some very friendly numbers, but it does go to show how some practice brokers across the continent are now looking at the lease differently because the banks are looking at the leases differently. When we were in Dallas, right, it was very clear to see B of A was presenting as well, and they were very clear that we will not issue a long-term loan if there's insufficient term on the lease. So this was an example in a separate location where there was clauses, specific paragraphs within the lease that the doctor was completely unaware of that had these demolition or termination rights within the lease, relocations, demolitions, etc. Basically, risk that was in the lease that the landlord, for whatever reason, for whatever time, could basically give the doctor notice and they'd have to be out or relocated within 2 months or out of the space within 6 months. And in this particular case, they reduced the price of the practice over $525,000. So part of the messaging here is, proactive investments versus reactive cost and helping to ensure that you've got the data, you've got the information specifically with that lease that might have been signed by the previous doctor in 1986, and it's since been renewed and then assigned when he purchased it and renewed, but it's that original lease from 1986. Back to Christine's point about the millennials and the Gen Xers and Gen Yers. Unfortunately, I'm in one of those latter categories. But it does go to show now that what's very different from when you may have purchased or when you may have opened your clinic about how important the lease is, because the lease now represents a security to the banks or a potential risk to the bank. If the bank too many times has seen a doctor get a $1 million loan and then 2 years later the landlord pushes them out or the doctor fails to exercise their option to renew, it really puts the entire practice in a very precarious position. And imagine if you just paid this money and a few years later you were then forced to relocate. So, lots of specific examples specifically about some of the risk. Now, one of the questions we posed earlier is the status of the lease. A lot of doctors, we had one recently in Southern California. I used to live in Santa Monica, Marina Del Rey, etc. One of the key things that we see some doctors think is that, you know what, gosh, Trent, I'm thinking of selling within the next few years. I don't want to sign another long-term lease. I don't want to, commit myself to it, but I just want to sell and I want to sell it for as much as possible. That is one of the biggest challenges we see today is doctors that in essence expose themselves and could contemplate losing 100% of their practice proceeds because of the fact they've left their lease in that month to month. And you might think that's great. Hey, I'm not committed. I could give 30 days notice. Wrong, right? The way the banks look at it and the way your buyer would look at it is I have no continuity of cash flow here. The likelihood that I can come in tomorrow, turn the key and see patients. Typically, right, unless you're just selling your charts, you want as much term as possible, as many options as possible, and certainly the right understanding of how the current market works and what some of the challenges that go through as well. Again, we truly appreciate the partnership and the sponsorship tonight for Patterson and the Navigate program, which we're all members of. But again, that's the great thing to think about this today. So, as much as you're thinking through your staffing issues and challenges of today, it's also a perfect time to take a little deep breath. And when you're saying, I just can't handle this anymore, make sure that if you're thinking of selling within the next 10 years, help to make sure that you have all the decisions you're making today are to help maximize the value around your long-term practice sale. Which is again a key piece. This was a very frustrating situation where they agreed to the sale price, the closing date, buyer and seller, and then they said, oh, yeah, we better let the landlord know. It is one of the consistent conditions of sale as it came through. So, right, the landlord said, we want personal guarantees. We want the selling doctor to be a personal guarantor, right? And then suddenly time lapse, frustration on both sides. And then basically the purchaser said, no way, right? If it's that hard to move in or take over this lease, I'm not interested. So at that point, the seller spent over 20 grand in legal fees, the purchaser spent another nine, and that whole deal died on the 11th hour. So the more things you can do today to prepare yourself for that eventual sale and to help minimize costs today are key. So part of that is this one little clause, and this is one of just dozens and dozens of clauses, but things like the assignment. So for those, the 46% of you that were thinking were of buying or building, this is a key clause. When you purchase a clinic, your purchase agreement or at least a letter of intent will typically be subject to the buyer approving, buyer getting financing and or the successful assignment of the lease. Again, what would your practice be worth without the physical keys? So the assignment clause is one key piece of both on the buying and selling side that becomes very, very important because it really does dictate if and how the practice can be assigned and or sold for that matter. And in some cases, the landlord has the right to terminate the lease just for asking to sell. So in the essence of time, I'll focus on the big pieces, but this is one of the dozens of clauses that we look at and go through on a Teams call with our clients, just purely as a high level to understand what's in there. The first red flag, literally, is that you cannot sell the clinic without the landlord's prior written consent. Full stop. Landlords want to know who's moving in, who's moving out, and almost every single lease has a clause like that in there. Number two, the landlord, once you ask, great, I want to sell to Dr. Cison, and the landlord can say yes, thumbs up, great, Christine looks like she's going to be a fantastic addition to our building, or say no, you know what, I don't like the cut of her jib. Or number three, in some cases, the landlord has the right to terminate the lease just for asking to sell. So imagine that you're about to sell your clinic. Not only you get the buyer, you get the seller, everything's done, right? Signed off, etc. We now go to the landlord to transfer the lease, and the landlord says no. And not only did they say no, they say, you know what? I'm going to terminate your lease as of your closing date, and I'm going to engage directly with the buyer. I did a CE course, and the doctor's husband came up to me to say I was buying this clinic, right, in the East Bay area of California. I went to the landlord before it closed and said, hey, I just want to introduce myself. We're taking over from Dr. Smith's space. Landlord said, you taking over that space? Are you paying for it? So yeah, we've, agreed we're buying the charts and the equipment and, goodwill and those sorts of things. Landlord said, why? So, well, it's great practice and looks good. It's fantastic. He said, why don't you just, hell, the lease is coming up. I'll just draw up a new lease for you. Gosh, it's going to be up in a couple months. Why don't I just do a direct lease with you? Pay me an extra 20% rent, and I'll deal directly with you. Right? That, could have, luckily, everything stuck through and they went through with the original deal. But that one landlord's approach to maximize their profits could have completely compromised the deal and left the selling doctor just responsible for selling the charts. Right. Also, towards the bottom, any sort of language of consideration, any other clauses in there that gives the landlord any right to the proceeds of your practice sale are a huge red flag. We are seeing landlords now ask for money in exchange with the assignment of the lease. And why? They justify it by saying, hey, look, in that practice valuation, it shows $122,000 is coming from the value of my leasehold improvements. So, from that perspective, the landlord says, look, you can get all the money from your equipment and charts and goodwill and everything else, but anything that is within my four walls that is physically attached to my space is leasehold improvements, right? If you're getting money for that, that's my money, not your money, which seems ridiculous after all the years in blood, sweat, and tears you've done. Lastly, a lot of the big concerns we see here is right down here at the bottom, the notwithstanding. So even if the landlord accepts the sale, right, to Dr. Cison, they would still hold the tenant personally and continually liable indefinitely as that lease continues to renew for years and decades ahead. So one little clause has obviously the impact of hundreds of thousands of dollars. This was a recent Google review, but it really did reiterate the point, similar to Christine's screenshot earlier, was, an absolutely lovely sweetheart of a dentist tried to sell her clinic 3 separate times. Each and every time the landlord said no. So, unfortunately, 74 years of age, she had to relocate her clinic. Imagine having to be at that last stage of your career, go through an entire relocation and rebuild just to be able to facilitate the practice sale. Luckily, we were able to find the space. The landlord covered almost all of the build out costs, but that is such a difficult situation that could have been avoided by properly structuring that lease in advance. Bottom line, it goes without saying that as we look at all these issues, it can be a significant challenge and a significant impact to that saleability of the clinic. The other pieces too, for the roughly 24% that are staying put, right, renewing, recruiting the right staff, retaining and beyond, help to make sure that you're aware of 2 dates and put them in your phone tonight. Number one is, when does your lease come up for renewal? Right? Oh, don't just think, oh yeah, I've got 20 years on my lease. You don't. It's typically a 10-year term and then 2 5-year options. The other date to put in is the option to renew deadline. This is a huge strategy that landlords use that will say that, look, in fairness, if if you want to stay, I need to know at least a year in advance, because if not, then I need to put up for a lease sign up and I need to be able to, rent it out and put 4 lease signs up and beyond. So, unfortunately, though, most landlords, if not all, don't proactively remind you that, oh, doctor, don't forget, you have to send me that registered letter that lets me know that you want to stay another 5 years. What we've seen so many landlords do lately is send through letters the day after the option to renew passes and lapses, and the remaining 5-year options to stay and renew in the space become null and void. Landlord then sends a letter to say, here's the, sorry to hear you're not going to be staying. We look forward to, having a successful transition out. As a reminder, you need to be out of the space, and 1 year from today, here's the process to return the keys. Can you imagine going through those? So the more things we can do today to be proactive. The last reason why so many doctors are overpaying in rent is principally because of the core issue of time. The best time to start a lease negotiation or renewal negotiation with the landlord is 2 years prior to the lease expiry. When do most doctors do it? 2 months, 2 weeks, right? Unfortunately, it's way too late. It takes upwards of 18 months to 24 months to pick up and relocate a clinic. In the essence of time, I won't go through all of this, but this was a perfect example in Christine's corner of the earth with the dentist for the San Francisco Giants. And, this was a scenario where he actually missed his option to renew deadline and got into the difficult situation where suddenly he lost his renewal options and got into a situation where he was quite concerned about the ability to stay, the ability to renew the lease because he's right across from the ballpark, and that obviously represented a huge proportion of his business. He reached out to us. We were able to do the complimentary lease review. I was on the call with them at the time, and it was a perfect piece of discussing, number one, how we fix things. So we were able to propose a new long-term lease to the landlord. We were able to get some significant improvements on the financial clauses. The landlord had the right to relocate him. That was removed. The assignment language and the ability for the landlord to say no was fixed. Sale proceeds also was fixed as well. Removed those termination rights. Helped to move the lease from his name personally to his corporation. Created multiple options to renew. And then also helped to make sure that we focused on how to reduce some of those financial impacts. Base rents, annual increases, common area maintenance, fixturing, free rent, tenant improvement allowance, landlord work. These are just some of the many different incentives and variables that that are so important you're aware of to negotiate, as well as all these. Now, good news, guys, we're going to keep this open for another 5 hours here. We're going to go through each and every one of these major clauses. I'm kidding. However, this is a great one of just some of the dozens of clauses that we focus on, and that if you're not aware of, I can't stress enough to have that review, dig out your lease, review it, and start to see what challenges there may be hidden within those leases. Lastly is, again, some great creative solutions. Number one, don't fall into that cycle of falling in too late. Landlords are taught that the more that they stall, delay, etc., is a great way to increase their profits purely by running out the clock. And the closer they get to expiry, the more they can increase, the less options they have. So in 32 years of doing this, we have, number one, best thing you can do is get all the information. If you don't have a digital copy of your lease, email your landlord tomorrow. Hey, I'm digitizing my records. Please send me the original lease, any amendments, riders, exhibits, and they'll send it back to you usually within the hour. Number two is figure out the long-term goals. What's the plan? Number three is have that lease professionally reviewed. Can't stress enough. Get the data, rental rates, vacancies, comp reports. Understand. Ask yourself, when was the last time I compared my rent to market price? Lastly, come up with a great, carefully choreographed game of chess. What have we not done yet? We have not picked up the phone and called the landlord. So please do not run into the office tomorrow and say, I saw this great webinar with Christine and Trent and Eric. And hey, Mr. Landlord, what do you want to charge me next time around? And skip steps 1 through 5. That is just the recipe for challenge. Then negotiate the financials, then negotiate all the business clauses, and don't stop until you get to that perfect final form lease. And you must get one that is countersigned by the landlord. If not, it's not worth the paper it's written on. So in appreciation for everyone's time, we'll have a quick pop up here in a second. And what we'll do is spend a few hours doing the due diligence, looking through your lease, looking through the rental rates of your building and the surrounding submarkets, pull up the demographic reports, and then start to look at some of these core numbers. Meaning, right? When we look at 4,100 square feet over $18 per square foot, we can get these to show it's actually a commitment. That lease renewal is actually over a $1.1 million commitment over the next 10 years, right? We then go through all the demographic reports. We look through traffic patterns. We look through, again, other availabilities of dental clinics close by. We look at what other dental tenants might be paying close by based on some of our proprietary data, as well as all the information about your landlord. And for those of you that own, it's the same thing, right? If you plan to sell and you want to keep your lease or keep your practice, real estate as a passive form of income, then you will need a lease at some point, right, between yourself and your practice and or your future practice. And having that lease professionally reviewed, looking at all the specific red lines are key. So as we wrap the 1 hour on the nose, perfect time for some great Q&A as we go through. So again, it's a privilege, guys. This is not easy to being an entrepreneur. It is certainly not easy to be a dental clinic owner. And definitely in today's world where we see the challenges with our staff and they may not share your values, they may not share the same focus on the business, and they may leave you high and dry. But know that there are great resources out there that will do a ton of things for you for free to help ensure that you are on the right track and to help make sure that you've protected yourself for the long term. So we'll open it up to some of the challenges. Christine, I see that you've been answering a bunch as we go. Thank you so much. What I will do is pull up a quick exit poll. So if you can, give us a little bit of additional information. And as mentioned, if you are looking for some additional information from ourselves, Swiss Monkey, or Arthur Marshall, question number 4, say yes, and we'll certainly help to distribute those as quickly as possible and follow up so we can schedule that complimentary lease review and rental rate analysis. So for all attendees and appreciation of your time, we do waive our fees and we will be happy to review your lease, set up a time with myself or some of the staff, spend an hour with you going through a lot of the red flags and helping to support. As Christine puts a big blue mark right across the screen. Christine, over to you. Let's touch on some of those great questions you had. Can you hear us, Christine?
Okay, I'm so sorry. I think for some reason I had the pen and I could not get out of it. I was like, where's my mouse again? Okay, so are there specific questions for me? I think I tried to answer as much of them as I possibly could. Dr. B, I think there's only a position description. Can you go through? I don't know, Eric, can you unmute so I can just make sure I understand her? It says there's one question I think I didn't answer properly, meaning what is described duties for their position or job? Amy, do you want to go through and just describe, just ask your question live so I can make sure I'm answering it properly?
Yeah, I think that allows us to post it that we're saying it live. So you might have to post a new one through there. Maybe just summarizing a few of them here is, yeah, Christine, you had answered a couple. Part of this is just, again, some of the challenges of duties, positions, and
Oh, yeah. What is it described for their? Yeah, I'll need a little background there. So, I mean, for us, the way that when we work with our practices, every office is different in their needs. So we'll work with you to figure out what you need your professional to do. So you may just need, hey, I only want my professional to be scheduling and taking a message and not touching my schedule. In other practices, it might be like, hey, it's you're answering the phone, you're taking the message, you're doing insurance verification, and you're putting it into the schedule, and then you're auditing it. So in terms of the job description, it's really up to the practice, and we let the practice decide what's best for them, and then we match them with a professional that we think could be a good fit. Ultimately, always the practice has final decision as to like which professional they want to work with, what rate that they are deciding is best in terms of that specific skill set and scope of work and the contract length. So again, we make it feel very much like an employee, although these are non-employees, they're all independent contractors. And I'm happy to kind of walk through the model, but the idea here is that we want to make sure that we're giving our practices full flexibility here to be able to adopt the talent in a way that works best for them. I really don't want you to have a bloated overhead, and I want to be really lean. So what I love about what we're trying to do here is that you can kind of plug into the remote professional network as you need to. It can be fluid, and it's deliberately built that way. So I'm happy to go through a little bit more detail and granularity if you want to talk, go offline.
Perfect. A good question, I think, also was through on the leasing side with sort of the ethics of it. And, again, we're the breadwinners. Why would the landlord, want to do this to us and otherwise? I mean, look, it's inherently there are fantastic landlords out there, but don't forget, these are for-profit businesses. They are mortgages. They are, and some are stretched, some have rising rates. And unfortunately, if you look at an average strip mall and hey, here's the dentist, yet also here's a nail salon, here's a coffee shop, etc. And suddenly, hey, if the landlord suddenly has to make up $3,000 or $4,000 worth of monthly mortgage expenditures, etc., who are they going to pass those costs on to? Is it going to be the multi-million-dollar dental clinic, right? Or is it going to be the nail salon that might be 1 or 2 months behind in rent? So, again, there's no college of landlords. There's no Hippocratic oath for landlords. It's a for-profit business, and I think it's just important to know they're not placing crowns. They're not removing impacted thirds. All they're doing all day, every day are negotiating leases. And quite frankly, again, they just part of it is an education of understanding the uniqueness of a dental clinic because to them, right, it's a square box and here's my lease and here's what I want to get paid and here's my expectations. So again, great questions. It's unfortunately, it's the old adage in life: you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate for. And the premise here is just if you're feeling like you're on the teeter-totter and that the landlord is down here like the Monopoly man and you're up here with the legs dangling in the air and you're feeling like I'm just going into this lease renewal completely outmatched, it's so important to realize that it's not. So many doctors think that gosh, if I leave, the landlord's going to put a dentist in tomorrow, and here's one, there's gone the next, and oh, my broker said it was just standard, and I should just sign it. Just go in with the eyes wide open. Ensure that you know what the terms are. And unfortunately, most doctors do fall into the trap that they focus on the first half of the first page, right? Who's the tenant? What's the monthly payment? What's the annual increase? And where do I send the check? Right? Yet there's 56 and a half other pages of stuff in there that could have, again, hundreds of thousands of dollars of risk. So perfect. Great. Yeah, perfect questions. Other questions? And Trent, I know there's a bunch of other ones that floated through here. Again, about, the talent piece. I think the talent was specifically referencing to dentists and obviously 6,000 dentists graduating, 12,000 postings for dentists. But what about the hygienists? And obviously there is some school and coaching there, yes. But what about some of the let it be front desk, let it be dental assistants, etc. There are so many people out of work. Why? Why is it still now, 3, 4 years post-COVID, why is it still such a challenge to get people to show up to work and care?
Yeah. Well, so speaking about hygienists, and I have a client in Norfolk, Virginia. She's in need of a hygienist. She has three hygienists right now. Pre-COVID, she had 8 chairs. She's an 8 chair and let me see, let me make sure I get this right. 5 of them were for hygienist. She had full time. COVID happened, they all exited the marketplace. One started a family. The other said, "Hey, I don't want to do this anymore. My husband makes good money. I'm not working." The third stuck with it, but demanded a lot more money. Virginia just came out, oh gosh, last week saying that there is a major, out of all the states, Virginia is one that is suffering from a shortage of hygienists. There's just not enough hygienists coming out of training to fulfill the roles. And I think part of it is just they exited the marketplace. And when they come back, on average, we're seeing hygienists off asking for 65 plus an hour. I have a client in Oregon who had a dentist or had a hygienist that was demanding $90 an hour. And so I just think with their financial demand, practices are saying, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to pay $90 for a hygienist. I'll do the cleanings myself and just suffer. So it's about having the conversation about how much the need really exists. And so no, I'm not saying yeah we pay hygienists $90 an hour, but what I am saying is look at other opportunities to fill that gap. So if it's not $90, if it's a hygienist that has children, maybe we're giving dollars going towards childcare. Maybe we're offering a massage once a week. Maybe we're giving other benefits that would cause that hygienist to say, you know what, I don't need 90, but that is something that I would take. 4-day work week, which most practices are already on a 4-day work week. But if you're not, maybe consider a 4-day work week. Different types of scheduling. I know at the end of the day, the goal is to take care of patients. So just thinking outside the box when it comes to accommodating some of the demands that we see coming from, hygienists. When it comes to the dental assistant, that's just working with them, just, being flexible. Everybody making sure that they feel like they're a part of the team. I do get some of that. The hygienists leaving because they didn't feel like they were appreciated. All I felt like was I was coming here, I was a number to see patients, and there was no respect for what I did and the amount of work that I do. We get a lot of that. And you have to, if you're in a great dental practice, your hygiene should be anywhere between 30 to 35% of your production. And so it's just a matter of, having those conversations and not to plug Arthur Marshall, but we do a great job of one, getting to know and understand a dental practice, the owner, what's important to them about any type of hire, whether it's support staff or an associate, and then going out and having those types of conversations with those candidates and really truly vetting them and not just I say recruiters, but my guys and girls are more like consultants. We have a true understanding of the industry and what's going on. So speaking to a candidate and really getting past that surface level of what they're saying they want and being able to have that true conversation and really getting past that um, helps. I mean, Dennis, you're a practice owner, you're a CEO, sometimes you're a landlord, you're the boss, and you don't have time to really spend to have those types of conversations and really vet through. You're in such desperate need. You're just saying, "Oh, you can do it. All right, let's start." And typically that leads to disaster.
Perfect. Excellent. We appreciate everyone's engagement. That's greatly appreciated. Almost everyone's still on, which is fantastic. CE credits will be issued roughly 10 business days and emailed directly to you. Christine, one other one that just popped through as well. What is the biggest a lot of questions about sort of how it works and what is the biggest misconception about having a remote front desk associate?
I would say that people feel like the quality of the patient experience suffers. I think that's probably the biggest misconception. And the goal here is if you do it right, it actually should improve your patient experience. And the reality is, like, I really want the on-site team to focus on everything that's revenue generating. I want them to focus on the patient inside of the office, greeting them when they come in. Hey, Eric, great. We're so excited to have you. Dr. Trent is ready for you. I mean, really providing that one-on-one experience, which is really difficult when the phone is ringing. You're on the phone with, your favorite dental insurance. And so the goal here is that if you really think through and you can work with a partner that's done this before, you can actually optimize your patient experience. You can reduce attrition in your front office because people aren't so burnt out. They feel like they're getting support, and you can increase your top line. So I think, and obviously, it's been done poorly before, and that's because I think we used to just plug people in and we just assume that professional would know what they've done. And we're really hand-holding our doctors in terms of how to do this. Well, let's do it slowly. We have some offices that just use a remote person 5 hours a month. Just those little tiny things you can always dial up with our model. So it doesn't need to be a full-time person. You might just need someone 20 hours a month to do hygiene recare. So the goal here is that be open to the idea. We can start really small, and that might just be it, right? It might just be, hey, it's only you have a great team. You only need this every now and then when someone's out and you need call support. So the model is really meant for a private practice to get some of the benefits that a lot of our enterprise clients have. And Amy, I saw an email, I think a comment in there, how do you know what the staff is doing? Accountability is really, really key. I mean, we feel like the impetus is on the remote professional to prove to the on-site team, to prove to the doctor, this is what I'm doing. And we think it's a privilege to work from home. So we have a bunch of tech that we've already curated to say, hey, Eric, if you're going to work from home, that's fantastic. We want to trust but verify what you're doing. So again, for us, we have not only the time clock, which I think obviously is I think more mechanical, but we take screenshots, we do again keyboard strokes, just to make sure like, hey, no one's taking advantage of the system. In my opinion, if you're clocked in and you're not working, you're effectively stealing from the practice, right? We see sometimes a lot of that on site. You clock in, you go get coffee. I see a lot of that sometimes with the dental assistants. And so our goal here is that if you're going to work from home and you're going to be charging the doctor and your client, we want to make sure that you're actually producing. And if you need to go out, clock out. That's kind of the philosophy that we really try to embed with our professionals. So screenshots, we do keyboard strokes. We have a productivity report that's really important. So at the end of every shift, Amy, what we do, and again, even if you're not using our platform and you're going to use it, you're going to have someone work from home, I would say integrate that in the structure of remote work for you. Hey, Eric, we're happy to have you work from home a couple of days a week or a couple of days a month to spend time with your family, have a little balance. During those days, I just need to have you submit just a summary of what you did that day. It's really to cover their butt. It's for you to feel good about what they're doing. And it just keeps accountability. And honestly, it also, when you have the conversations about a raise and they want to, they want to get a bonus, you're not using your emotions. Like, hey, Trent, you've been here for 5 years. We love you. We're going to give you our traditional 3% inflation bonus. It's more like, hey, let's discuss what, you want to make $5 more. Let's look at your productivity report. Let's see what you've been able to, how you've been able to impact the practice in a positive way and see if it makes sense. And how do we get you to where it goes? So then the conversation about raises and money isn't so emotional. It's more like, let's just look at the reports, right? We have the productivity. It shows what you've done. It shows what we paid. We can just use some data to be able to have the conversation. And so that we can take a little bit of some of the emotional part of it out of the equation. So.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, appreciate everyone's extra time. These were some fantastic Q&As. Trent, thank you so much for helping out for Kevin at a family emergency tonight. Great job, Trent. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your 15 years in the space and helping to find and sort the right talent. And Christine, thank you again. Always a privilege to really get a good understanding for what is next around the curve and how technology can really help change the perception of the traditional practice. So doctors, again, can't thank you enough for your time. Hopefully tonight was, again, educational. Any feedback is always greatly appreciated. We continue to strive to find some of the best subject matter experts out there. And remember, you are not alone in any of this. There are fantastic resources that can help, and look forward to working with each and every one of you.
Thanks, everyone. Great
Thanks,
job, Eric.
guys. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.